after we developed the Asian Studies program, the history class, and we went on to try to get more Asian Americans hired there, this was in concert with the African Americans who were doing the same thing, and we were supportive of each other in terms of getting those types of things. The African Americans then were looking at a different tact in terms of getting somebody on the Board of Trustees. But whereas we as Asian Americans looked around and we had no administrators, yet there was 1,000 Asian students on campus at the particular time, but yet none, we had no Asian Americans as administrators. And so we started asking the questions, well, why? Why is it that you have no Asian Americans as administrators? You're willing to hire individuals as teachers finally, and then when we had our first counselor hired, and so forth. So as we started meeting with the administrators and so forth, they came up with this issue that Asian Americans were not qualified. And so it was the exact same excuse they used for African Americans, because once again, we were kind of in concert with what they were doing and so forth. And so we started looking at this issue, and we had the opportunity to talk to a few of the Asian Americans that actually had applied. And then when we did some research on it, we found out that they actually had all the qualifications. So when we brought that back to the administrators, they said, oh, they were overqualified. And so we were trying to figure out how can you be overqualified, and so forth. And so we started bringing these issues up, and they kept going back to the issue of, yes, we believe in hiring Asian Americans. In fact, we just hired 2 as custodians. And we would say, no, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about there's nothing wrong with being a custodian. Nothing wrong at all. We're glad that you hired them, and so forth. But we're talking about Asian Americans at every level here at the college. And we see that we had not had a problem having Asian Americans as custodians or janitors or people out in the food service areas. What we're talking about is administrators. And so they constantly would not agree with us. And so we started demanding then. Our requests started turning into demands. So it went from the administration to the Board of Trustees. And so we started meeting with them. We had regular meetings with them. And it came to a point where I think they just got sick and tired of us. So at the last meeting, when they were supposed to come back with an answer, whether or not they were going to support our request that they hire Asian Americans, they didn't show up at the meeting. They just flat didn't show up. They sent the chancellor and the president of Seattle Community College to meet with us. And so we said, well, what's the answer? Why didn't the board show up? And they said, well, they sent us. Well, we said, well, what is your answer? You've been saying that you needed time to think about it. And they said, no, you need time to think about it. We already gave you our answer. And I still remember the president saying is that I'm not going to let you Asian Americans sneak through the back door and get administrative jobs. We're not hiring anybody. So we walked out of the meeting. And we immediately started saying, well, obviously, they're not taking us serious. At that particular time, there had never been, in modern day, an Asian American demonstration. The Coalition for Equality supported the black movement for jobs in the construction field. But in terms of creating anything specifically for Asian Americans, there was nothing. We tried to take a look at California and others to try to see whether or not there was anything that we could copy. There was nothing at that particular time. So as we met and so forth as a coalition, we had to study and see what we needed to do next. And one of the things we talked about was closing down Seattle Community College. We didn't think we had the numbers. The African Americans closed it down the year before, but they had a little bit larger numbers. And of the 1,000 Asian American students, the awareness wasn't there of this political movement and so forth. And many of those students were in the vocational programs. So they were constantly in class, and they weren't in the college transfer, which was quite different and so forth. And the classes are different. And so they couldn't get out of class and so forth like that. So we needed to have a smaller target. So the target became the administration building and so forth. And this is where we went out and reached out to the other student unions that were being created. One was being created at the University of Washington. Some others were being created at Franklin High School and so forth. So we kind of made these inroads. to different organizations and asked them to come and support us for this very first demonstration and so forth. And because we were totally frustrated by meeting with the administrators and then meeting with the Board of Trustees, we clearly knew that they were not giving us any respect. Whereas they became very frightened of African Americans. And so they would move a little quicker, and they never would disrespect them the way that we felt that they disrespected us by not meeting with us. So we knew that we were going to have to do something, and we created this, movement. And so we put it out to all the community members to come and join us, and that we would close down the campus, or excuse me, we would close down the administration office, which we did, which was in February of 1971. And so we had no idea how many were going to come. In terms of the student union, there was only 10 of us. And so the numbers weren't very large and so forth. But good thing that the other groups from the other colleges and community came forward. All students came forward to assist and help us. And so after the rally and so forth out in the parking lot, we immediately went through the administration and we kicked everybody out. And we forced all the individuals. There had about 100 administrators in that building, and so we closed it down and we chained up the door and so forth and locked it out. And obviously the press loves demonstrations, so they were there and wanted to know what our demands were. And our demands at that particular time was for the immediate hiring of 5 Asian Americans, because we were able to document 5 Asian Americans that they did not hire because they were overqualified, so forth. That evening, the chancellor came by my house to give me a proposal and so forth, saying that, yes, we understand, and thank you very much for bringing it to our attention that we may have had discriminatory practices, but we won't be doing that in the past, so thank you very much. So I asked them the one question: are you guys agreeing to hire Asian Americans as administrators? No, we are not. But we do appreciate the fact that you brought up the issue to us, so we will study it. And so that was that night, and we said, well, thank you, and we'll see you later. And so he went, and then so we immediately went to reaching out to more students, reaching out to more individuals about what we needed to do next. And so we had a lot of difficulties. People were coming to me constantly saying, you guys already won. You set history. You made history by closing down the administrative office. We closed it down for a day, and then we went on because we felt that they would come back with us and negotiate, which didn't happen, and so forth. So in March, 3 weeks later, we came back, and it was kind of funny because we didn't want to come to the administrative office and find the doors locked, because then you can't have a very good demonstration. So we made the demonstration for 10 o'clock and put it out. Join us for the demonstration. We went there at 8 o'clock. So because we felt that at 8 o'clock all the staff were coming in, so we'd go right in there with them. So we went there at 8 o'clock and to try to fool them, because that way we knew that the doors would still be open and so forth. And it was crazy because it snowed that day. You know, it doesn't even snow that much in Seattle, so we're saying, oh my goodness, it's hard enough to do a demonstration as it is, and now we have snow. But individuals did come, and they did come at 10, but a vanguard of about 20 of us went in there at 8 o'clock to keep the doors open. So immediately we went in and kicked everybody out. One of the things that we did is that we wanted a peaceful demonstration, and we didn't want to destroy things. But if you don't have things for people to do, they start doing bad things and so forth. So we had come up with the idea that we would take canary paper, which is yellow, and we were saying the only thing that's yellow in here is this paper. So we took the paper, and then by that time there was about 200 people in the demonstration. So we gave them the task of redoing the entire administration building with canary paper. So we put it all on the walls. So we had the tape and so forth, and we redid the whole place with, we didn't want to paint it, obviously, so we put paper everywhere. and just plastered all the walls, and that was our symbol. But it was also a way, and then we had some entertainment going on, and then we also used some of the other movements. The radical women's movement and the socialist movement and so forth came to support us, the Black Panther Party. But in particular, we used the women's movement and the Socialist Party unit to be able to help and assist us outside, because we needed the inside part and we needed the main part to be Asian American focused. Because once again, there wasn't an Asian American movement as such. There wasn't Asian American demonstrations. So we needed to be able to show the community that we cared and that we're willing to fight for our own issues. And so they all agreed, and they were our they watched out for us on the outside to see where the tactical squads were going to hit us from, and so forth. And so they were our scouts, and so forth. And at Seattle Community College, it was right behind the administration building is the reservoir, and the police tactical squad was on the other side of the reservoir, hiding, waiting to get the order to come in and kick us out, and so forth. And so at that particular time, we had already been there from 8 to 5, and we had made our demands. We made all of the things again, saying that we wanted to have the Asian administrators hired immediately. And we knew that that wasn't going to happen, but they weren't agreeing to anything. So we just kept our that push for Asian Americans immediately 5 right now, and so forth. At that particular time, though, it became 5 o'clock. The tactical squad was forming to come in. And at that time, too, police were a little bit more free to do what they wanted to do. And so in demonstrations like that, they clearly would come in with the thought that they were going to crack your head open, and so forth. And so we didn't want to have our students hurt, and so forth. So when we got the word that they were forming and they were getting ready to rush us, that's when we knew what day they were going to come through. They were going to come right through the backside, come through the back door, and kick us all out, and so forth. So as soon as they made their rush, we gathered everybody out and went out the front door, and so forth. So when they went in there looking for us, we were already gone. So we were outside with the cameras, because we didn't want to be caught in there where nobody could see us. But Broadway, obviously, is a very busy street. We wanted to be seen, and so forth. So when they came through the building, came out, and they saw us on there with all the press, they didn't do anything. It was only the students who hung around on the sides and so forth that actually got arrested, and so forth. Because I was standing there with the Human Rights Department, and I was standing there with some lawyers. I was standing there with the media. They didn't arrest me, and so forth. So it was real interesting, because at that particular time I was called down to the police department. I thought it was a trick. Oh, sure, I'm going to go to the police department. But that was because students were arrested, and so forth. And I didn't even know that. And so I had to go down and help get them out, and so forth. But what had come out of this later on was obviously a lot of publicity. Once again, it was kind of the first demonstration. So there was a lot of publicity. There was a lot of people in the community wondering, why are we doing this? Because once again, it was a different time. People didn't understand the Asian movement, didn't understand why we would demonstrate. Here we are, college students. What gives us the right to go in and close down an administration office? But what came out of that was individuals within the Asian American communities came forward to support us. And because the comments was that I was a juvenile delinquent, and that they were trying to isolate me, say that I had no real community backing, and so forth, and that we were simply a small student group that had nothing, and that nobody in the community agreed with us. This is what the administration was saying. And so it took them by surprise when individuals from ACE and some of the other ministers and so forth, key ministers in the area, came forward to go and meet with the board and say, we support what the students are doing, and so forth. Once again, then the Board of Trustees met with us and asked us, what do we want? We said, well, we are not changing from what we've been saying. We want Asian Americans. And they sat down and they said, hey, listen, we can't just fire somebody, but we know that we have a guy, a top administrator, leaving us. would it be okay if we hired an Asian American starting fall quarter? Could we do that? And then could you guys stop demonstrating? And could we also, retract the statement about you being a juvenile delinquent and all these negative things they had said about me? And I said, sure. But that wasn't the major concern. The concern was the hiring of an Asian American and so forth. And they also made the promise at that particular time to hire an Asian American president. And that's actually in the Board of Trustees' minutes, which I actually had a copy of. And sure enough, the administrator resigned, retired, and a position came open. And that fall, they hired a guy named Frank Fuji to be the first Asian American administrator at the college. And Frank, it's a coincidence that he was one of the individuals a few years before that was denied the opportunity to be an administrator because they said he was overqualified and so forth. So that started that whole trend of demonstrations and so forth. And then obviously students have rules, and because I broke those rules in terms of the demonstrations and so forth, I was asked to leave the college and so forth. But it just turned out that I already had my credits. So at that particular time, I transferred the next semester. So I didn't go through the hearings. I was supposed to go through all the student hearings to explain why I did these demonstrations, and I refused to do any of those things. And I wasn't going to play that little game of saying that, oh, please let me stay here, and so forth. So they said, well, if you don't come, we will kick you out of school starting spring quarter. And at that time, I transferred to the University of Washington.